My mentor said my new partner was perfect. I trusted him, but then I found my partner trying to kill me during a training simulation. I thought he was the enemy, but the truth was a conspiracy that went all the way to the top. My mentor, Marcus, hadn't approved of any of my partners since my last one died 3 years ago. So when he finally brought someone new to meet me, I was terrified of ruining it. Julian showed up in a crisp uniform, with a firm handshake and a bottle of decent whiskey, looking me straight in the eye when he promised to have my back. I'd been practicing what to say all week, worried I'd come across as the overprotective operative who'd already driven two other potential partners to request a transfer before they got serious enough for joint missions. After my last partner, Sarah, died, Marcus and I had become each other's whole world, and I knew I needed to let someone else in, even if it scared me to trust again. And Julian seemed great. When he found out I loved vintage spy novels, his whole face lit up. He told me about reading them with his late father before cancer took him 2 years ago. That weekend, Julian joined me in the shooting range, just the two of us. We spent 6 hours firing rounds, talking about everything from his data analysis job to his plans to propose to his girlfriend once he's saved enough for a proper ring. He asked my advice about field work and being a good partner, genuinely listening when I talked about losing Sarah and how I wished I'd had more time with her. When I mentioned that I had barely smiled since the funeral, Julian promised he'd do everything to bring the focus back into my life. When he helped me clean my rifle and I called him partner, his eyes watered like I'd given him something he'd been missing since his dad died. Over the next few months, Julian became the partner I'd never had. And more importantly, he brought me back to life. Every time I saw him, there were more hints of the focused operative I'd missed since Sarah died. Julian would stop by on weekends to help with my training simulations, while I was on mandatory downtime, fix my comms unit without letting me pay him, and started joining me for Thursday night debriefs when I worked late. During the agency's holiday party, he gave this beautiful toast about finding not just a partner in me, but the sense of purpose he'd lost when his father died. And everyone got emotional, including my section chief, who never cries at anything. When my own father died suddenly in February, Julian took time off work to help with arrangements and stood beside me at the service like actual family. He even asked my blessing to use his grandmother's vintage watch as a down payment on a ring. And I told him nothing would make me happier than officially calling him my partner. We started taking weekend assignments together, all three of us, me, Julian, and Marcus, camping at remote listening posts where Julian would wake up early to make everyone coffee over the fire. During a trip to the mountains, he taught me how to fly fish, something I'd always wanted to learn but never had anyone patient enough to show me. He stood in the freezing river for 3 hours, fixing my casting technique, never getting frustrated when I tangled the line for the 20th time. Watching Marcus watch us from the shore, smiling like I hadn't seen since before Sarah died, I thought maybe we'd both found our way through the grief. But then everything came crashing down. One night, someone was pounding on my door so hard I grabbed the pistol from my nightstand. When I yanked it open, ready to fire, I stood there in my pajamas, barefoot in the freezing cold, the entire left side of my face swollen, purple, and black. My eye was completely shut, and blood dripped from my split lip onto my white shirt as I collapsed into Marcus's arms, sobbing so hard I couldn't speak. I finally told him Julian had been sabotaging me for months, starting with accidentally jamming my equipment and deleting files, escalating to training accidents where I'd get bruised. He convinced me I was lucky to have him after being so damaged by Sarah's death, that no one else would want someone so broken, that Marcus had finally seemed happy again, and I'd ruin that if he knew. Tonight, he'd gotten drunk and accused me of being a double agent because I smiled at the intel analyst, then punched me unconscious when I tried to leave. The man I'd called partner had been destroying me while I taught him my grandfather's fishing spots and trusted him with mission protocols. I thought about all the signs I'd missed while celebrating my return to normalcy. The makeup getting heavier to cover bruises, my flinching when Julian moved too quickly, the way I'd gone quiet at debriefs while he told all the stories, my asking about a solo mission, and Julian laughing about why I'd need to go anywhere without him. That strange moment at Easter when I dropped the data slate and went white with terror before Julian smiled and said, "Accidents happen." How I'd stopped wearing my usual clothes and started covering every inch of skin. I had been screaming for help in silence while I thanked Julian for bringing me back to life. I held on to Marcus while I cried myself to sleep on his couch, my body still shaking, even unconscious for whatever trauma I couldn't see under my clothes. When I woke up hours later, disoriented and terrified until I recognized his living room, I looked at my destroyed face and thought about what Sarah would want me to do. She had made me promise before she died that I'd protect myself, no matter what it took, that I'd be both a shield and a sword. Looking at my destroyed face, I felt something cold and final settle deep in my chest, knowing exactly what she would expect from me now. I kissed her photo on the mantelpiece gently and tucked the blanket tighter around my shoulders. I'm going to take care of this permanently, I told her photo, my voice coming from somewhere I didn't recognize. And you're never going to have to worry about Julian again. The same sun that would rise tomorrow on whatever came next. I must have dozed off at the table because suddenly Marcus's hand was on my shoulder, shaking me gently. The clock showed 7 o'clock in the morning. 3 hours had passed like nothing. Alex, his voice was small, careful. Did you go see him? I looked up at his worried face. He knew. Of course he knew. We'd always been able to read each other, especially after Sarah died. He's leaving town, I said simply. He sank into the chair across from me, wincing as his old injuries protested the movement. What did you do? What needed to be done? We sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken truths filling the space between us. Then I started crying again. But these weren't tears of fear or pain. These were tears of shame. I should have been stronger, I whispered. Should have left him months ago. Stop. He reached across and took my hand. None of this is on you. 2 hours later, I was helping myself into the car. Every movement hurt. I could see it in the way I held my breath getting into the seat, the way I pressed my hand against my ribs. The agency's infirmary wasn't far, but every bump in the road made me flinch. We need to document everything, I said, though the words tasted bitter. Document it for what? So Julian could hire a lawyer and claim I was lying? The emergency room was quiet for a Tuesday morning. Dr. Michelle Schwartz took me back immediately when she saw my face. She was gentle but thorough, cataloging every bruise with clinical precision. Purple-black around the eye, split lip requiring 3 stitches, bruised ribs possibly cracked, finger marks on both upper arms, older bruises on my back in various stages of healing. Yellow ones from weeks ago, purple ones from last week. The agency will press charges even if you don't want to, Dr. Schwartz explained while taking photographs. With injuries this severe, it's out of your hands. I nodded numbly. I paced the hallway outside while they finished the examination, my hands clenching and unclenching. Every photo was evidence of my failure to protect myself. Every bruise was a time I'd laughed at Julian's jokes instead of seeing what he really was. At 11 o'clock, Detective Elizabeth Moody arrived. She was older, maybe 50, with kind eyes and an air of competence that made me trust her immediately. She interviewed me alone while Marcus waited outside, wearing a groove in the hospital's linoleum floor. Through the door's window, I could see myself crying as I talked, Detective Moody handing me tissues and waiting patiently for me to continue. An hour passed, then another. When we finally emerged, we both looked drained. Mr. Hayes, Detective Moody said, we're going to find Julian and arrest him. Attempted murder, assault, battery. He's looking at serious time. If you can find him, I said. Her expression darkened. Men like Julian always think they're smarter than they are. We'll find him. But when we got home that afternoon, I wasn't taking chances. I installed new deadbolts on every door while Marcus rested on the couch. My friend Laura Gonzalez came by with soup and stayed to keep me company while I reinforced windows and checked sight lines from the street. Has he tried to contact you? Laura asked quietly. No. Marcus scared him last night. I glanced at him. He won't come here. But we were both wrong. The next day, Julian showed up at the agency. Security footage showed him arguing with the guards, demanding to see me, claiming he was still my emergency contact. He caused such a scene that 3 security guards had to physically remove him. My section chief put me on immediate leave for my safety and the safety of other staff. He's taking everything from me, I said when I got home. My job, my sense of safety, everything. It's temporary, Marcus said, though we both knew some things couldn't be gotten back. 3 days after the confrontation, Detective Moody called with frustrating news. They couldn't find Julian to serve the restraining order. His apartment was empty, cleared out in a hurry. His phone was off, his credit cards unused, his car nowhere to be found. Do you have somewhere else you could stay? She asked. Family out of town? We're not running from him, I said firmly. But I could see the fear in my eyes. Julian knew our routines, our schedules, where we shopped, where we ate. He'd spent months studying us while pretending to love us. That evening, I went out to my truck to get groceries and found all four tires slashed. Deep, angry cuts that had let them deflate completely. A note under the windshield in Julian's handwriting. You took everything from me. Daniel came to help me change them, bringing his whole kit from the garage. As we worked, he mentioned quietly, I've got a gun you can borrow if you need it. Not yet, I said, though we both knew that was changing. The offer stands, Daniel said. Some problems can't be fixed with talking. That night, day 4 since the confrontation, I woke up screaming at 2 o'clock in the morning. I found myself barricaded in the bathroom, convinced Julian was in the house. I'd pushed the hamper against the door and was crouched in the tub, shaking violently. He's here, I kept saying. I heard him. He's in the house. It took an hour for Marcus to calm me down enough to come out. We checked every room together, every closet, under every bed. The house was empty, but the fear remained. Check again, I asked. Then again. Would you really have killed him? I asked as dawn broke. That night, at his apartment. He didn't answer. We both knew the truth. The 5th day, we started moving between places. Daniel's house for one night, a motel the next, Laura's apartment. Never the same place twice, never a predictable pattern. I hated it. Hated being driven from my own home. Hated giving Julian that power. This is what he wants, I said, to control us even when he's not here. Detective Moody checked in daily, frustrated by Julian's ability to stay hidden. He has to surface eventually. Men like him can't stay away. Their obsession won't let them. On the 7th day, we made the mistake of going home to get more clothes. The house looked normal from the outside, but inside, things had been moved. Photos turned face down. Sarah's picture missing from the mantel. And on my bed, a dead bird, the same kind we used to see at the lake. He'd been in our house, touched our things, left his mark to show he could get to us whenever he wanted. I stood in my doorway, staring at the dead bird on my pillow. Something in my expression hardened. I'm not letting him chase us from Sarah's house. This is our home. Alex, no. My voice was steel. We stop running. We make our stand here. The 8th day started with Daniel calling. His voice was tight, urgent. Alex, I just saw your boy Julian at the Chevron on Route 9. He was buying gas cans, talking to himself. Looked rough, like he hadn't slept in days. My blood went cold. Gas cans meant fire. Fire meant he was planning something. Did you call the police? Yeah, but he was gone before they got there. Alex, he looked bad. Real bad. Like a man with nothing left to lose. That evening, I was cleaning Daniel's gun in the garage when Marcus found me. I'd finally taken him up on his offer, telling myself it was just a precaution, but we both knew better. He stood in the doorway, watching me oil the barrel, his expression unreadable. Teach me, I said. I need to know how to protect myself. You won't always be there. And Julian, he's not going to stop. So, Marcus taught me how to hold a gun. We went down to the basement where the sound wouldn't carry. Working with it unloaded, he showed me the safety, how to check a chamber, how to aim. My hands were steady, steadier than his had been that night at Julian's apartment. Sarah would hate this, I said, sighting down the barrel at an imaginary target. No, he corrected. Your partner would hate that it's necessary. 2 more days crawled by. We moved through them like ghosts, always watching, always ready. Then Detective Moody called with what she said was good news. We've tracked him to the Riverside Motel off Highway 60, she said, excitement creeping into her professional tone. We're going to arrest him tomorrow morning. This will all be over soon. I actually smiled when Marcus told me. A real smile, the first I'd seen since that night. I showed up barefoot and bleeding. We ordered pizza that evening, pretending things were normal, pretending we weren't both armed now, changed by Julian's poison into people we didn't recognize. But the arrest went wrong. Detective Moody called the next morning, her voice flat with frustration. He ran, saw us coming, and took off in his car. Crashed into a tree about 2 miles down the road. Is he? I couldn't finish the question with Marcus listening. Injured but alive. Broken arm, concussion. He's in custody now. But Alex, she paused. He's saying you attacked him first. That you're lying about the abuse. His lawyer is already building a case. The trial was set for 6 months away. 6 months of waiting, of looking over our shoulders, of Julian's shadow growing longer. But the worst part came a week later when he made bail. It's substantial, Detective Moody assured us, and he'll have an ankle monitor. The judge says he's not a flight risk. I went pale at the news. I felt that cold thing in my chest, the thing that had been growing since that night, spread a little further. Julian stayed with his cousin just outside the restraining order's 1,000-foot limit. We'd see his car parked at the legal distance from our house, from my work, from the grocery store. Always watching, always there. The police said they couldn't do anything if he wasn't breaking the order. He's smart, Detective Moody admitted during one of her check-ins. Knows exactly how far he can push without violating the terms. That night, I followed Julian to a bar downtown. I sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching through the window as he laughed with friends, gesturing wildly. I could see him playing the victim, probably telling them about his crazy ex-partner and her violent mentor. They believed him. Men like Julian were always believed. I sat there with Daniel's gun on the seat beside me, thinking how easy it would be. Wait for him to come out drunk. Follow him to a dark spot. Make it look like a mugging gone wrong. But Marcus needed me here, not in prison. So I drove home and found him sitting at the kitchen table, unable to sleep. You followed him, he said. Not a question. Yeah. Did you? No. But I wanted to. He nodded, understanding perfectly. We were both fighting the same battle now. The one between who he used to be and who Julian was turning us into. 3 days later, Julian cut his ankle monitor and disappeared. The call came early in the morning. Detective Moody sounded exhausted. He's in the wind. We're searching, but just be careful. Lock everything. We'll have a car outside your house. We spent that day barricaded inside, jumping at every sound. The police car outside was reassuring, but we both knew if Julian really wanted in, he'd find a way. Not like him always did. That afternoon, they found his car at the lake. Our lake, the place where we'd spent so many peaceful hours fishing, where he'd call me Pops, and I taught him to tie flies. He was poisoning every good memory, turning them all into weapons. We're searching the area, Detective Moody told us. But there's a lot of ground to cover. He wasn't running. We both knew that. He was planning something. The next evening, Daniel called me from his garage. His voice was shaky, scared in a way I'd never heard from a man who'd survived 3 tours in Afghanistan. He was here, Alex, in my garage, with a knife. We fought. I broke his arm, the good one. But he got away. I need stitches, but I'll be okay. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Don't apologize. Just keep that gun close. He's hurt bad now, and desperate. That makes him more dangerous, not less. The next morning, Julian called from a stolen phone. His voice was slurred from pain pills, barely coherent, but the rage came through clear. This is your fault, he rambled. You turned him against me. We were happy. We were perfect. You ruined everything. Come try something, I said, my voice steady. See what happens. Oh, I will. I'm going to take everything from you, just like you took everything from me. The line went dead. We both knew this was ending soon, one way or another. Detective Moody came by that afternoon with evidence bags full of journals they'd found in Julian's car. Pages and pages about me, detailed plans for taking me, receipts for rope and sedatives. She showed us photos of the pages, my name written hundreds of times in increasingly erratic handwriting. I ran to the bathroom and threw up. I stared at the photos, at the physical evidence of Julian's obsession, and felt that cold thing in my chest freeze solid. We need to get you somewhere safe, Detective Moody said. Somewhere he doesn't know about. That night, I took Marcus to our cabin in the woods. It was 3 hours north, a place my partner and I had bought years ago, but rarely used. Julian had never known about it. We should be safe there. But when we arrived, there were fresh footprints in the dirt around the cabin. Boot prints that weren't ours, circling the building like a predator stalking prey. He found us, Marcus whispered. We were alone out here. No cell service, no neighbors for miles. Exactly where he wanted us. I checked every lock, every window, while Marcus unpacked our things. We had food for a few days, the gun, the bat. We could hold out until morning, then drive back to town and regroup. But something felt wrong. The woods were too quiet, like even the animals knew a predator was near. At 10 o'clock, the power went out. Not a flicker or a surge, just sudden, complete darkness. Not an accident. Stay calm, I whispered to Marcus, though my own heart was racing. Get the gun. I heard movement outside, footsteps on the deck. Slow, deliberate. He wanted us to know he was there. Marcus, lock yourself in the bathroom, I said. No. His voice was firm. We stayed together. He had the gun. I had the bat. We stood in the dark living room, backs to the wall, waiting. Julian's voice came from outside, muffled but clear. I love you, Alex. I can't live without you. His words switched between pleading and threatening, love and hate, all mixed together in a toxic soup of obsession. We were meant to be together. Your mentor poisoned you against me. But I forgive you. I'll always forgive you, even after you made me hurt you. You're sick, Marcus called out, his voice stronger than I expected. I'm sick. Julian laughed, high and unhinged. You're the one who made me like this. You and your damaged little family. Your dead partner and broken mentor. I tried to fix you both, but you wouldn't let me. The window exploded. Glass showered across the room as Julian climbed through. His broken arm in a filthy cast, his good arm holding the knife from Daniel's garage. His eyes were wild, unfocused, like he was seeing something beyond this room. I swung the bat, but he ducked with surprising speed for someone so injured. He rushed at me, knife raised, screaming something incoherent about love and betrayal. The gun fired. The sound was impossibly loud in the small cabin, making my ears ring. Julian staggered back, red spreading across his shirt, but he didn't fall. He took another step toward me, knife still raised. I brought the bat down on his shoulder with all my strength. I felt bones break, heard him scream. The knife fell from his hand as he dropped to his knees. He fell forward, blood pooling beneath him on the cabin floor. His breathing was wet, labored. Marcus stood frozen, gun still raised, staring at what we'd done. I checked his pulse. Weak, but there. He was dying, but not dead yet. We had minutes to decide. I reached for my phone to call 911, but Marcus's hand stopped me. Wait, he said, his voice perfectly steady. He looked down at Julian, bleeding on the floor, remembering every bruise, every threat, every moment of terror he'd given me. What would Sarah do? He asked. We both knew the answer. My partner would have protected me at any cost, would have chosen my safety over Julian's life without hesitation. We stood there for 5 long minutes, watching Julian's breathing get shallower. His eyes found me one last time, confused and angry, even at the end. Then they went empty. Only then did I call 911. There's been an intruder, I said calmly. He broke in and attacked us. We defended ourselves. We need police and an ambulance, though it's too late for the intruder. The police arrived within the hour, though it felt like days. Detective Moody took our statements separately, but our stories matched because they were mostly true. We just left out those 5 minutes of watching, of choosing. The scene supported our story. Broken window, knife, Julian's history. Detective Moody's eyes stayed on mine a beat too long, like she could see through the carefully constructed timeline, but she just nodded and closed her notebook. We'll need you both at the station for formal statements, she said. Standard procedure. The drive to the police station at 2 o'clock in the morning felt surreal. Marcus sat beside me in the passenger seat, still wearing the shirt with Julian's blood on it. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? We'd crossed a line together, become accomplices in something darker than self-defense. At the station, they separated us. Different rooms, different detectives. A man named Christopher Clark interviewed me, while Detective Moody took Marcus. I stuck to our story. The break-in, the attack, defending ourselves. I described Julian climbing through the window with a knife, Marcus firing when he came at me hitting him with a bat. All true. I just compressed the timeline, made his death immediate instead of those long 5 minutes of watching a bleed out. You did what you had to do, Detective Clark said when I finished. Clear case of self-defense. But his tone suggested he knew there was more. Cops always know. They just decide what's worth pursuing. When they finally released us at dawn, Marcus looked hollow. We drove home in silence, past news vans already gathering at the cabin. By morning, Julian's death would be everywhere. The next day, the story hit the local news. Operative kills ex-partner in self-defense after months of abuse. They used Julian's booking photo from his arrest, making him look dangerous. They used my agency photo, making me look innocent. The narrative wrote itself. Brave operative fights back against his abuser. Nobody questioned it. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends who hadn't known about the abuse. I didn't answer any of them, just sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands. The hands that had held the bat, the hands that had. They all want to know why I didn't tell them, I said quietly. How do I explain that shame is louder than fear? Daniel came by to fix the window in my truck that Julian had smashed weeks ago. We worked in comfortable silence, the way men do when words would make things worse. Before he left, he gripped my shoulder. Your partner would be proud, he said. You protected yourself. That's all that matters. I wanted to believe him, but I kept thinking about those 5 minutes, about the choice we'd made to let Julian die. Would she be proud of that, too? Or horrified at what we'd become? The investigation closed quickly. A week later, Detective Moody called with the official news. No charges will be filed. Clear self-defense. The prosecutor wouldn't even take it to a grand jury. Julian's history of violence, the restraining order, the break-in, the weapon, everything supported our story. You can move on now, she said. But moving on wasn't that simple. Trauma doesn't end when the threat dies. It lives in your bones, changes your DNA, rewrites who you are at a cellular level. I went back to work 3 weeks after Julian's death. I tried to pretend everything was normal, but I could see the changes. I flinched when new recruits raised their voices. I checked every exit in every room. I kept my back to walls, never to doors. The easy trust I'd once given freely was gone, replaced by constant vigilance. An operative grabbed my wrist today. I told Marcus one evening, just trying to get my attention, but I almost broke his fingers before I remembered where I was. We had our first real dinner together 4 weeks after that night. Not takeout eaten in silence, but an actual meal I cooked. I pushed food around my plate for a while before speaking. I'm not sorry he's dead, I said, meeting his eyes. I'm sorry I had to be the one to pull the trigger. I'm sorry for what it's done to us. But I'm not sorry he's gone. I know, he said, and I did. The guilt we carried wasn't about Julian's death. It was about becoming people capable of choosing to let someone die. The next week, I found Marcus at the cemetery, sitting by Sarah's grave. He was talking quietly, telling her everything about Julian, about the abuse, about that night in the cabin, about who we'd become. I asked her if she'd forgive us. Marcus said when I sat beside him. For what we did, for what we didn't do. What do you think she'd say? I think she'd say she's glad we're alive. That's all she ever wanted, for us to survive. Even if surviving changed us. That afternoon, Detective Moody stopped by the house. Not officially, she made that clear. Just checking in, she said. But over coffee, she told us something that shifted the weight on my chest. Julian had 2 other restraining orders, she said quietly. Different states, different women. Similar patterns of escalation. You weren't his first victims. She paused, choosing her words carefully. But you were his last. Sometimes the system fails, and people have to protect themselves. I'm glad you both survived. After she left, Marcus and I sat with that information. Julian had done this before. Would have done it again. How many women had we saved by ending him? The next week, we went to my apartment to pack Julian's things. He'd been putting it off, but his cousin wanted his belongings. As we boxed up his clothes and books, I found something that made me go pale. Hidden cameras, 3 of them, tucked in vents and behind picture frames. He'd been watching me even when he wasn't there. The violation felt fresh all over again, continuing even after his death. How long? I asked, though we both knew there was no good answer. We burned the cameras in the backyard, watching the plastic melt and smoke. Another secret between us. Another thing we'd never tell anyone. Daniel and Laura helped us repaint the house that weekend, trying to cover the ghosts that lingered in every room. We painted my old bedroom, the living room where I collapsed that first night, the kitchen where we'd planned what to do. Laura brought music and wine, trying to make it feel like a fresh start instead of an exorcism. At one point, Daniel made a joke about my terrible paint technique, and I actually laughed. Not a polite laugh or a forced laugh, but a real one that came from my belly. For just a moment, I looked like myself again, the kid from before Julian, before the abuse, before that night in the cabin. Then the shadow returned. But that moment of light gave me hope. We started therapy together 8 weeks after Julian's death. The counselor asked us directly if we regretted that night. Marcus and I looked at each other, a whole conversation in that glance. We never talked about the 5 minutes, not directly, but we both knew it lived between us, a shared secret that bonded us in darkness. We regret that it came to that, I said finally. We regret not seeing the signs sooner. We regret that Julian chose violence and forced us to choose it too. But not the outcome, the therapist pressed gently. No, Marcus said firmly. Not the outcome. 2 months after that night, I found myself at the lake where Julian and I used to fish. I stood on the shore, remembering all those peaceful mornings, teaching him to tie flies, him calling me Pops with tears in his eyes, the way he'd talked about finding the father he'd lost. Had any of it been real? Or was every moment a calculated manipulation designed to get closer to me? I'd probably never know. Predators like Julian were expert chameleons, showing you exactly what you wanted to see. Marcus found me there that afternoon. He stood beside me, picking up flat stones and skipping them across the water. We didn't talk for a long time, just stood together, watching the ripples spread and fade. "Does it matter?" he finally asked. "Whether any of it was real?" I thought about that. I guess not. Real or fake, it led to the same place. "We survived," he said. "That's what matters, even if we're different people now." As evening approached, the lake turned golden in the setting sun. Marcus looked at me with those eyes that had seen too much. "Do you recognize yourself anymore?" he asked. The question I've been avoiding for 2 months. I thought about the man who'd taught Julian to fish, who'd trusted him with family recipes, who'd called him son. That man was gone, replaced by someone harder, someone capable of watching a man die without calling for help. "No," I admitted, "but I recognized the man your partner needed me to become. The mentor who'd do anything to protect his operative." He nodded, understanding perfectly. We were both strangers to ourselves now, transformed by violence and necessity. As darkness fell, we stayed by the lake. Two people forever changed, bound by blood, both shared and spilled. The water was calm, reflecting the stars that were starting to appear. We were not calm. We might never be calm again, but we were alive. We were together. And sometimes, when the world shows you its teeth, that's the only victory that matters. Marcus took my hand as we stood there, his grip firm and sure. "Sarah would understand," he said, "about the monsters we became to fight the monster. She'd understand that sometimes love means becoming something terrible to protect what matters." The lake held all our memories, the good ones with Julian before we knew what he was, and the knowledge of what we'd done after. It would keep our secrets. This place where I'd once been happy and innocent. Now would be where I came to remember that innocence was a luxury we could no longer afford. We were survivors now, Marcus and I. Not victims, not heroes, just two people who'd done what was necessary when the system failed us. We'd chosen each other over everything else, even our own souls. And as we walked back to the car in darkness, leaving the lake to its ancient silence, I knew we'd make that choice again, every time.